Hopefully by now you have viewed the YouTube video, The History of English in 10 Minutes. It moved really fast through the periods of British history and about the English language and the words that came into and how it entered the language. And so we're just going to, with this next activity, we're going to go more into detail about the history of the English language. I gave you a graphic organizer on pages 7 and 8 of your ISN, and you will just fill in as we go along through the notes. So we'll start with the top part. And so I tried to make this as easy as possible for you in the event that we're not in school and you're having to listen to this screencast. So if it's in blue, it fills into some blank in the note on the notes organizer. So we're actually at the very top of page 7 where it says the history of the English language started. Okay, and we're just going to fill in the blanks with this information. Try to commit this stuff to memory, but this is very, I know it's probably relative, but it's very interesting how our language came about and the origins of the English language, and so that's what we're really going to dig into today. So the history of the English language started when there were 3 Germanic tribes, and they were called the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, and they invaded Britain during the 5th century. The word England actually comes from the word Angleland, the land of the Angles. So all 3 of these Germanic tribes spoke similar languages, which developed into what we now call Old English. So when they invaded, they came in, they took over, and the 3 Germanic languages kind of blended together in what we now know as Old English. So about half of the words in modern English have Old English roots. So half of the words that we speak have Old English roots. It's actually a very interesting thing. So Old English was spoken until around 1100 or so AD. And we'll look at that here really quick. I've got some graphics for you. So Old English here is really not very recognizable in terms of when we look at the text. It does look like a foreign language. There are a lot of blended letters, a lot of unique letters to the Old English language. All right, so moving on to the next section. Middle English was spoken from 1100 to around 1500 AD. And so the Normans from France, led by William the Conqueror, they invaded and conquered England. Okay, and so they're bringing French with them. Obviously, they're from France. They're bringing French with them into English. And so when they conquered and took over England, the upper class began to speak that French language. But the lower classes spoke English. And the reason for that is that the lower classes didn't have access to education to learn the French like the upper class did. So in the 14th century, moving forward, English became the dominant language again, and we'll talk about when that happened when we look at the Canterbury Tales in a few days. So the lower classes spoke the English, the upper classes spoke the French, and we called that blend, we called this French infused blend of English, we called Middle English. And you can see here that you should be able to recognize a lot more of these words, which is strange because we came from this to this, so it made a huge jump in what we're now able to recognize as a form of English. You will notice that there are still some strange spellings. We have some strange substitution of letters that look like they shouldn't be there, and we'll talk about that also when we do the Canterbury Tales. So then we move into early modern, and I'm on the back page, or the back the page 8. So we're talking about early modern English, and that was about 1500 to 1800. So the biggest things that happened during this time period were the Great Vowel Shift. So in in Middle English, the vowels were longer. Like this word is chica. So it's longer vowels, and so the vowel shift that happened during early modern is they started pronouncing the vowels shorter and shorter and shorter, and so as a result many new words and phrases entered the language. It was a huge change in pronunciation. The invention of printing also aided in the spread of this language and the popularity of this language, because there was now a common language in print and it was accessible to many more people so that they could learn it. So spelling and grammar became fixed, and the London dialect became the standard dialect of English. In 1604, the first English dictionary was published. So now, not only do we have a common language in print, but we have dictionary of words that are widely available for people to understand. So it's a fixed dictionary, and obviously it changes over time. Things enter the dictionaries all the time, but this was a huge deal during early modern English. Moving forward into late modern, this was from about 1800 to present day in England. Okay. So the major difference, of course, is the vocabulary. The Industrial Revolution was happening during the first part of that time period. Technology was advancing during the early part of that time period and still is today. So these two things, the Industrial Revolution and technology, they created this need for new words, because they had to have words to call these machines and this technology and these things that were happening, this expansion. So that helped progress the late modern English with that vocabulary. Also, the British Empire kind of went on a world tour, as you saw in the History of English in 10 Minutes. And so they started expanding and bringing in other countries and other places into their empire, and as a result, when that happens, we adopt foreign words into the language from all these different countries. Now that doesn't really apply to our English here, because our English actually started in about 1600. So that was when we Americans broke away from England and came to North America. And as a result of us coming here, we began to create our own distinct version of English, the American version of English. So in many ways, then, American English is more like the English of Shakespeare, which is early modern, than it is the late or modern British English. And our English is also influenced by other things as well. We have the Spanish, the French, South African, Native American. All of those languages flow into our American English and make it what it is, today.